Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Cyclades Legendary Edition from Open Sesame Games. This is not going to follow the general format of my reviews because this is a bit different. You see, I've already reviewed Cyclades, or more specifically, I've already reviewed the non-Legendary Edition of Cyclades from Maublanc over here a while ago. I'll link to that review down below if you want to see my general opinions of Cyclades. It's a game that's been in my top 20 games of all time non-stop for the past 5 years. Basically for, maybe since I've played it, I don't know how long. Since I started tracking these things, Cyclades as a game has been a game that has stuck in my top 20 games of all time every single year consistently. It is a game that I love, it's a game that I enjoy, and to that end, reviewing the Legendary Edition or having a chance to dive into and play the Legendary Edition to find the differences, all those things, and to talk about the experience, we're going to do that, but understand I'm walking in already loving the infrastructure and systems that this game is, plus whatever changes there are, of course. Now, this is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change, especially in particular, there's going to be a lot of standees and meeples instead of miniatures, things like that, and make sure to go ahead and check out the Kickstarter page. I'll link to that down below to get a sense of what the various options are, what the pledge levels are, what you can get your hands on. I have things like these standees of the Minotaur as opposed to the actual miniature and all that, so take into account very much prototype as far as everything goes here. Past that, I'll have the review timestamped. I'm going to be giving you a brief overview of what Cyclades is. Again, you can check out my original review, although there are differences at play. It might be confusing, I don't know the best way to handle this, but I'm going to give you an overview of how Cyclades plays. I'm going to talk about the changes and then how I feel about those changes, because if I'm just talking about Cyclades, I already love it. I already love this game. It's been a 5 out of 5 for me since I played it. Now, whether this stays the 5 out of 5 or not, that's where you can either watch this entire video or just skip to final thoughts and find out for yourself, well, faster. With that said, what is this game? This is an area control game. It's an area control game which the main focus is going to be on the bidding and manipulation of the gods. You're going to have 6 gods in play over here, and this is the first point where I'm going to say there will be a lot of differences as I talk through things. If you just want me to highlight the differences, that will be a timestamp. Just check out that. But once again, you're going to have 6 gods in the game over here. We have Athena, we have Ares, we have Hera, I believe, we have Poseidon, we have Zeus, and we have Apollo in play as far as the 6 gods you're going to see in this game. Your goal is to, every turn you're going to go through a cycle, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take income based on what you control on the board. So right about now, you can see across the board, you have various water areas that are going to have these income markers. These cornucopias represent income, but you also have those on land. This spot over here is generating 2 income. This spot over here is generating 3 income. You're going to see all these income markers on the board, some that will start off on the board when you put this board together, and others that will be added throughout the course of choosing Apollo as you go through the game. Those income markers, and more specifically your control over those areas, so for example right now if we're blue, we have 1, 2, we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 income coming in. We have 9 income as blue coming in right now, mostly from their C spots. This actually is not controlled by blue. We'd have to put a blue character over here. I don't have a blue character. They're off to the side, so maybe 1 less than 9 over here, and the blue should have a land area. This is a mistake over here, but either way, 9 income from blue as far as getting themselves the various income, the cornucopias. You will take your income, you'll grab those coins, and then you'll go through the process of bidding on which god's favor you're going to get this turn. You see, there are going to be bidding markers in play. You have 1 for each color in play over here, and then you're going to have a number of gods available each round equal to the player count. So in a 4-player game, you'll have the top 3 over here, and then you'll have always Apollo. Apollo is always in play, and Apollo effectively is the skip a turn god, who is going to increase your income and also make sure you spend nothing that turn, improving your economy for the next phase. The other gods are going to be cycling. So right now, for example, we have Athena, we have Ares, and we have Hera, who are in play, and players are going to bid on getting their favor this round, and then next round, the gods that are not in play will cycle up to the top, and the others will come down. Athena will still be in play, and these 2 will be out of play, and it's constantly rotating around in a predictable set manner as far as how you go through things while you have the gods in play. As far as the bidding, the way that's going to work is the person on the top of the spot will choose who to bid on. Maybe they bid on Ares for 3 over here. They're going to commit to paying 3 in order to get Ares' favor, which will determine everything they can do in this game. Everything you do in this game is determined by the gods. You can't blink without having the gods give you their say-so, and so that's a big part of what you're doing as you go through this. You'll have the next player over here, and they sit there and they go down to Hera for 2. Meanwhile, purple really wanted Ares, so they outbid blue on 5 over here. They take Ares' next spot, but then now blue has to go somewhere else, and you cannot immediately return to Ares' track. You can return there later, but you cannot immediately return to Ares' track. You have to go somewhere else first, and if you got outbid there, maybe you can return. To that end, blue did want Ares, and blue's going to go ahead and pay 0 to go on Athena, expecting to be outbid. This is where yellow has a choice. Yellow can go ahead and outbid blue, triggering another cycle of outbidding. Alternatively, you can go ahead and any of the other gods, or maybe just end it and go to Apollo. For right now, they're actually going to go 1 on Athena. They don't mind knocking blue out. It seems like too good a price to pay. Blue's going to jump back 2 over here, knocking purple out. Purple doesn't really care about the rest of them. Purple's going to go down to Apollo, and that triggers the end of the bidding phase. Once you have the players on different tracks, that'll trigger the end of the bidding phase. Players will go ahead and pay in their income, pay in their coins equal to the bid that they have, less any priestesses in play. Priestesses are going to be cards you can acquire that will lower your bids, and so getting a bunch of those means every single turn as you bid, you'll be spending less money because you have those priestesses in play. Once you're done with that, you're going to start resolving your actions, moving top down from the track. So we're going to start with Athena. Athena's going to have the opportunity to go first, and then Ares, and then Hera, and then continuing downwards, you're going to resolve actions. And every player board has the actions that they have over here. Generally, most gods are going to give you a building and some sort of perk. So in the case of Athena, you get a philosopher's, a white building, whatever they're called again, and a philosopher, and you can pay 4 coins for another philosopher once if you want to. And then you can also buy any creature cards over here, as well as you can move any of your heroes you've acquired throughout the course of the game. You have the opportunity to gather the heroes through Hera over here, and those heroes are going to give you the flexibility of movement, because normally you can only move units if you won the favor of Ares, but you could pay to move your heroes around the board if you have heroes in play, and then playing as any other god except for Apollo. Apollo can do nothing. Apollo's, you can't buy creatures, you can't do anything. You can't do anything when you have Apollo. You can just do the core actions they have. So you're going to go ahead, you have those actions. If you're Ares, you're going to get a fortress, one of the building types. You're going to get a unit. You can pay for more units, or you can move around the board. And this, again, is where the fun of Cyclades comes in, because so much of the game is about what you have, but so much more of the game is about what you can actually do. Having and doing are two totally different things. You can have a massive army of units, but if you can't move them around the board, they're not worth anything to you. And so having those heroes, or having the favor of Ares, those are essential components. The problem is, Poseidon over here is how you control the ships over here. Poseidon's going to let you get ships in play, and that's important because normally in this game, when you're moving around on the board, you have a few options. You can move to an adjacent area to take control of that, but you can also move across a fleet of your own ships. So you can go ahead and go across there because of the ship over here. If you have this ship over here, you can go in one action. If you have enough ships on the board, I have enough ships I can show you this. I don't at the moment. Where are my purple ships? If you have enough ships on the board, you can go ahead and move across your own string of ships in one action to start invading other areas of the board, and so setting up a fleet of ships is incredibly important, which is why Poseidon is incredibly important. Meanwhile, Ares is going to help you get your Ares is Zeus over here. Zeus is going to help you get more discounts in play. That's how you're going to get priestesses, which give you a discount on bidding, but it's also going to give you temples, which give you a discount on buying these various creatures every round, because everyone except for Apollo can buy creatures, although you're going to do it in top-down order, giving priority order to the player at the top, which also means sometimes you're doing the trade-off between the fact that you may want Ares, but you also want these 2 creatures, and you can only guarantee those 2 creatures if you actually win Athena's favor, and those trade-offs around turn order and the cycle of how things play out are going to be incredibly important. So again, you earn income, you bid on the favor of the gods, and then from there the gods allow you to do everything in the game. They allow you to get buildings, because the ultimate core goal of the game is to get metropolises. Specifically, you want 3 metropolises in play. In order to get those, there's a few ways to get them, but one of the ways is to have one of each 4 of the building types, at which point you'll remove those 4 buildings and put a metropolis in play. You can also get a metropolis through the use of these philosophers over here. You get philosophers from Athena, and Athena, you get 2 a turn from Athena if you pay for them, and then you can also go ahead and trade in 4 of them for metropolis, and so getting a bunch of philosophers lets you just straight up trade for Metropolis. The next way you can go ahead and get your hands on Metropolis is to use these various heroes. A lot of the heroes will give you an extra way that if you sacrifice the hero, you'll have the opportunity of earning Metropolis. So for example, Ajax over here, if you control 7 land areas, you can simply build a Metropolis by sacrificing Ajax. And a lot of the heroes that you can get are going to give you an in-game ability. They're also going to give you the freedom and flexibility of movement, because you can start moving people out of turn, which is incredibly important. But then also many of them will give you, they all give you a sacrifice ability, some of which are not related to Metropolises, but most of which are related to another way to get your hands on Metropolis in one way or another. And then of course the last way to get Metropolis, and possibly the best way, is to straight up conquer one. Moving into an area with a Metropolis means you are going to take control of that, wresting it from the player who currently controlled it, and bring it to yourself, which is going to help you drive the win. That's the core idea of what's going on in the core cycle of turns. Past that, there's going to be the creatures, which we briefly touched upon. The creatures are going to be a creature deck over here that give you a giant deck full of powers and abilities. This should be face down, I don't know why it's this way, but you have a giant deck of creatures and powers and abilities where you have the opportunity to spend money, 2, 3, 4, 5 money, to get a variety of creatures and their abilities. We have the Griffin, steal half the money rounded down of another player. You just watched your jerk friend who took control of the oceans earn 14 money. Well, you can go ahead and bid on Athena, and then spend whatever, the $3 over here to steal 7 money from them, upping your pot and denying them at the same time, assuming you've been tracking who has enough money behind their screens. You have Polyphemus over here, who's going to be a creature that drops down into an island and shoves all the boats away from an island. Now remember, you need boats to be able to conquer anyone. You need that access to move from one island to the next across these bodies of water. You need those boats. If you have a giant creature shoving everything away from the island, it's going to make it a whole lot harder to bring those reinforcements into play, and so you have these cards over here, this creature deck, that are going to consist of creature standees that go into the board and have an ongoing effect, or just one-time abilities that are going to in some way affect things. You know, teleport across the island, sniper person. We have Pegasus, that's the teleport across an island over here. We have the Griffin, steal money. You have a ton of these powers and abilities that are going to come into play through the creatures, but then you also have the heroes, which we briefly touched upon. Hero over here is going to allow you to recruit a hero, and these heroes give you an ability. Ajax has a strength of 2, that's helpful. Hector, when troops invade his zone, he destroys one before combat, giving you strong defensive bonuses, but they also give you the ability to move out of turn, and they give you those sacrificial abilities, which gives you a lot of flexibility as you go through the game. And that's kind of the core cycle of play. You're going to go through that bidding cycle, trying to earn money, trying to spend the money on the right gods, trying to figure out how you're going to be trying to get to work your way towards 3 Metropolis in this game as you try to win. There are some elements we have not heavily covered. We haven't talked a lot about battle. Battle is effectively going to be the number of units you have, plus a die that has a 0, 1, 2, and 3 on the die. You have a 3, a 0, 2 1s, and 2 2s, giving you some degree of a middling out there, but you can have players rolling the dice, adding them to the number of troops that they have, and then resolving combat, possibly retreating. Again, I'm not going through every degree of everything here, because a lot of the elements of this I've already covered previously in Cyclades and my previous Cyclades review, and also this is not a how to play, this is a general review, which means if you're jumping here now from the timestamp about the things that are different in this game, let's start off with the differences from this and original Cyclades. And these are the differences I'm going to be primarily focusing as I give you my opinion of this game. So, starting off the bat, we have the combined aspects of Heroes, Titans, and base Cyclades all at play. The original Cyclades had the original Cyclades, and then they had the, I'm going to try and remember the name of the expansion. They had the Underworld expansion, but I can't remember the name of the expansion. It had, the original Cyclades had the Titans expansion, which was a very large box expansion that to some extent fixed certain aspects of the game. But you also had the other expansion whose name I'm forgetting, and then a bunch of small modular expansions. And this expansion over here, this not expansion, this version of the game, the Legendary Edition, combines a bunch of elements from those things. There's going to be bonuses on the back of these metropolises, which is possibly akin to some of the specific metropolises you have in one of these small little box expansions. You have the heroes in play are kind of a combination of the regular heroes and the Titans in the way you can move around the board. We have Hera over here as a hero who takes the place of Kratos? I don't remember which one it was, but the main god of from Titans in that game. And so this combines aspects of all three together in a singular box that takes some of the, in my opinion, best expansion aspects and mixes them together. There are some expansion aspects that are not present here, so if you want all the things that, at least in what I have right now, again, check the Kickstarter for whatever else is on there, I don't know, but as far as what I have for the prototype, there are some elements of the various expansions that are not present, so if you wanted everything, make sure to do your research as far as what is and isn't included in this Legendary Edition of the game. The variable map is going to be a big one over here. We have these map tiles, these just plug out over here, giving you entirely variable maps. You're going to have 2 map tiles per player, and that's a big difference between this and the original Cyclades. If you have Cyclades and Titans, then you effectively have 2 maps. There's some ways of player count will adjust for that, but for the most part, this gives you a much more modular map, and therefore gives you some stronger degree of replayability, as you don't get caught up into certain patterns of how the islands are laid out and what the best positioning is. Things are modular, which does mean that there's going to be some degree of better and worse areas, but it means that you can re-examine the strategic aspect of what you're doing every single time you play that. Now, you will almost always have groupings of islands and water in a way that will still give you some degree of general similarities, but the actual differences will be present game to game. You're going to have the fact that you're going for 3 metropolises instead of 2. This is always a big deal between the original Cyclades and this one over here, the fact that you're going for 3 metropolises gives you a bit more room for not going directly from 1 to 2 and just triggering the end game right away. But it also balances that by giving you a bit more freedom and flexibility as far as how you get those metropolises because of the heroes. They actually tune some things back because you can't buy buildings as fast, but they give you those heroes, and it balances out nicely to the point where a 3 metropolis game over here will run you somewhere in the range of 2.5 hours, maybe 3 if you're running a little slower, but I'd say around 2.5, especially if you know what it's doing. And theoretically, you could of course still play to 2 metropolises if you find that you just want a shorter experience, although that will have some of the the reasons they took that out, but you can always house whatever you want in there. It's going to have incremental bidding, which is a big deal. You'll notice these bid tracks over here go from 0 to 1 to 2, 3, then 5, then 7, then 10, 15, 20, and 25. This incremental bidding totally changes the way players approach the Cyclades bidding engine. Previously in the original Cyclades, a lot of the game was focused on, I will go specifically to a god track that I want to be outbid on, because that will give me the agency and control over getting to the exact bid that I want, now that I have more information about what you're willing to do and how far you're willing to go. The incremental bidding changes that so tremendously. I guess we're branching into opinions over here, but the incremental bidding is going to be a different way that you approach that, in which you have a different reason or incentive to try to jump straight to the 10, because if you don't take the 10, your next option is 15. You can't bid by 1, and so force you to re-examine how you approach the bidding engine. We have obviously Hera as a god, as replacing again Kratos or whoever it was in the Titans expansion. We have a team mode and a 2-player mode, which I have not played, so I cannot comment on those extensively. We have the non-randomized gods over here. In general, in Cyclades, whenever you had extra gods in play, you'd have a degree of which gods were out of play, and you'd randomize the order of them as they came out. But over here, you'd always have the out of play god. If this god was out of play, it would be in play, and the rest would all be shuffled up and cycled in, which gave you less predictability and more who knows what's going to happen and how is that going to affect things. And in this one over here, you always have the same relative order. So even though whatever's in play, you know what's going to be cycling down, what's going to be coming out, and in what order it is, giving you far more control, for better or for worse, over how things play out. You also have the Metropolis as bonuses, which I touched upon briefly already. Behind every Metropolis, you're going to flip one over. You're going to get a bonus, whether it's a new priestess, whether it's more units, whether it's some money. So you have those bonuses as you build the Metropolises. And like I mentioned already with the heroes, you have more opportunities for how you actually get Metropolises into play. And then lastly, you also have mercenaries. You have these mercenary units over here, which are going to be units you can gather from Hera, and they're going to be yours until they're not. There are some cards and creatures that will steal mercenaries, but also they're drop more fickle, because at times you will ultimately have to leave them behind, and there might be times or cards that will just kill a unit, leaving your mercenaries at the whim of whoever comes by and starts paying their bills. There's actually no ongoing bills, there's just having them on the board, but thematically, you know what I mean. Those are the main differences that I am currently aware of. It's possible I missed some over here, but there's a lot of small things that have adjusted to how it goes. Some smaller, some less small. You know, the variable map is obviously a huge difference. The combination of kind of mixing in Titans and heroes and basic lives all together, that's a big deal. The fact that Metropolis has a thing on the back may not be as big a deal, although they're all factors over here, but those are the core differences, which means now it's time to just, I guess, give you a brief recap of as to how I feel about Cyclades, and then a specific recap as to how I feel about the Legendary Edition. I love Cyclades. I said this at the beginning of my review. It's been in my top 20 games of all time since I played it, and it hasn't really shifted. It's part of an original trilogy of Cyclades, Inish, and Kemet, and all of them I've loved. Kemet is one that has dropped down a bit for me, but Inish and Cyclades have held strong in my top 20 games of all time, year after year after year after year, and I've always loved, specifically what I love about Cyclades is the bidding mechanism at play, the fact that you have an entire area control puzzle, and then it all comes down to, can you actually earn the favor of the relevant god that's going to help you gain the victory? And that difference over here, the fact that you're trying to control the economy and control the gods so that you can control this main gameplay over here, it totally changes the way you approach with an area control game in a way that's incredibly satisfying in so many different ways. I adore the game. I have for a very, very long time. It's one of my favorite games. As far as the Legendary Edition, and for me, again, top 20 games of all time for me, a 5 out of 5. I love that game, and it hasn't changed or gone down in any reasonable metric. As far as the Legendary Edition, this is one of those things where to a certain extent there are aspects that I will need more time on. I think the biggest thing I'll need more time on is how do I feel about the various expansions that I don't currently have access for. Again, I don't know what the Kickstarter has planned, I don't know if they're going to be added in some way, but there are some small aspects in play that aren't present, although I will note they are the aspects that I use the least frequently. And I don't know if that's my own experience or if they just happen to work out that way, but to me some of the elements of Cyclades that I do use most commonly are going to be the heroes. I love using the heroes from the, again, I can't remember the name of the expansion, but the other main expansion. I love using the heroes for that. There's a regular edition I bring in. I also would bring in the little pillars they could walk around with. I enjoyed those. Those aren't present over here. But I very much enjoyed Titans, and I found that I'd often alternate between base Cyclades and Titans because I liked both of them and how they added to the gameplay. And I really enjoy that Legendary Edition kind of feels to me like they really fine-tuned a lot of what the best parts of Cyclades are and then made it a more cohesive experience for it. Whereas with the original Cyclades, I feel that I would bounce between the original Cyclades and Titans, trying to just get the best out of both by having different gameplay experiences. I feel this almost does that inherently. The nature of the groupings of islands, the way these are structured, is less together than in Cyclades, less together than in Titans, but more spread out than in base Cyclades, and so you have more areas of being able to jump from land to land, while also having to rely on ships, and it really feels like both are impactful as you go through that. So I really enjoy the way this is structured to that end. I also really enjoy the modular map tiles. I like the push to 3 metropolises. There's always been a complaint and a debate in my game group about whether 2 was or wasn't good enough, whether it triggered that endgame rush, whether someone felt like they snuck a win in, and 3 really does give you that extra degree of leeway, and there's enough acceleration that even though it might be hour 2 before you get to your first metropolis, but within a half an hour you'll have closed out your next 2. This game does have that snowball effect as you improve your economy, as you start stealing metropolises from other players, you start putting things down the board. I really enjoy that adjustment to 3 metropolises. The incremental bidding, I touched upon this already, but it totally changes the way you approach the bidding, and it gives you a lot more push and pull. There's still reasons to try to specifically try to get outbid so you can get a sense of other people's economy and play it out that way. There's definitely still reasons to do so, but there's just as much reason to lock in that 7 spot, to lock in that 10 spot, so you don't have to pay that incrementally more amount, and so it really pushes you to re-examine how and where you explore pushing up these bidding tracks as you go through it in a way that's so rewarding. Hera and the mercenaries that she provides, that's another aspect. She provides the heroes, she provides the mercenaries, and she provides that catch-all, hey, here's another building in case you'd missed it over here, and so you have that flexibility of buildings all mixed in, and she just gives you more stuff on the board. You have your own units, which are limited. You have a limited amount of miniatures to play with, and having mercenaries does help you with that, but then having heroes allows you that control, being able to jump around, and they're all incredibly impactful. Again, borrowing some elements from Titans over there as far as how that operates. The non-randomized gods, the fact that you have a control over where this plays out, that's something I thought I actually wouldn't like, because I always like the idea of, like, we're going to flip the gods over here and we'll see who's going to happen, what's going to do, what are you going to be able to do, will Ares be able to conquer, will Poseidon move the ships. I kind of like that randomized aspect of things, but I just as much like the non-randomized aspect, possibly more, although in theory you can still be randomized if you want. You can still just shuffle it on the table, be randomized in case you miss that aspect, but for me, I think I prefer it the way it is now, where every single turn you'd be planning out what you do this turn, while also planning around next turn. Maybe I bid a little less this turn because I'm going to need my money because I know that Ares is at the top of the track, and I could really use that final push towards the end. And so, overall, and I know I didn't touch upon every one of the changes, but overall, I feel that Legendary Edition, based on my plays of it so far, they do feel like someone took a look at what Cyclades is, like someone took a look at the feedback of what players gave, and sat there and said, how can we keep all the good while making this a cohesive, single box experience? And Legendary Edition does feel like the result of that. It feels like an improved Cyclades. After my game group's first game of this, and this is one of those things where when it comes to prototypes, I try not to expose them to my regular game group in terms of as much or as frequent unless I know it's something they're going to like. But we all love Cyclades. We've been playing it for years. The core group of people have been playing this for years. And after our first game diving into this new version, one of my friends was just harping about how every single change was for the better. Every single change felt like it just made the game experience better. And I don't really know how to necessarily grade things because, again, it's a top 20 game of all time for me, and it's a 5 out of 5 as it was, and so there's a few ways things can go. Cyclades could have gone down a notch. It could have been, hey, you know what, these changes I didn't really appreciate. I really like the 2 metropolises. I don't like the extra gods. I prefer the old way, and for some people that might be true. If you preferred base Cyclades, if you really didn't like the addition of Titans giving you extra movement around the board, you may not like the fact that the heroes have that. It's kind of baked in. I would say if you are someone who didn't like Titans, you may want to consider whether this Legendary Edition is for you or not, because it has that kind of baked into the mechanics. Whereas if you're someone who loved Titans, or if someone like me who kind of liked both and felt that midway tug and the tug and push and tug, if you felt that tug of war between both of them, then this very much delivers on that. For us, for our game group, this was an improved version for every single one of us at the table. From a game that's already a 5 out of 5 and already a top 20. So what does that mean? Where does this one, is this going to be in my top 10? I don't know. We'll let time settle that one out. But what I will say is Legendary Edition feels, whenever people approach putting out a new version of an old game, sometimes it feels like they missed the mark. Sometimes it feels like they did what they wanted to do, and it didn't necessarily come from the players, the people who love the game. And I'll grant that, the handful of people in my game group do not constitute everyone that loves Cyclades. But for us, it feels like they did this one right. I very much enjoy Cyclades Legendary Edition. It's an easy 5 out of 5 because it's basically Cyclades, but with thought and feedback and a lot of good changes behind it, and I highly recommend it. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.